Hello, I would like to welcome you to this series of webinars on cannabis business operations provided by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cannabis Regulation. I am Natalie Darvis, the Dean of Faculty at Oaksterdam University, and I will be your moderator this evening. This webinar, amongst other educational sessions, is the official launch of the Business Licensing and Compliance Assistance Program for social equity applicants in the great city of LA. The goal of this program is to help applicants obtain a commercial cannabis license, as well as operate a successful cannabis business. Tonight's webinar will be our second installment on brand development and marketing strategy. Now, before we get started, let's review some housekeeping rules. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and can be viewed after the editing process, likely in a few weeks, on DCR's website. You will be muted with cameras off for the duration of the webinar. This means that your camera and audio functions will not be available to you during this session. You will be able to see and hear all the panelists, however. While virtual hand raising has been turned off, there is an open chat box where you can interact with one another for networking or comment on the information. Please use caution when sharing personal information in a public forum and keep your questions focused on tonight's topic. And speaking of questions, please ask questions about tonight's subject matter in the Q&A box. We are gathering and responding to your questions throughout the presentation, and we will have a robust Q&A session in the last 45 or 30 to 45 minutes of tonight's event. The Q&A box is located in the bottom panel of your Zoom screen. This is also known as your participant controls. The chat box is available for interaction with other participants. We will be posting a survey link in the chat later in this presentation. We want to ensure that the education you are receiving in these webinars is beneficial and useful to your cannabis licensing process. We will use your feedback from these surveys to inform how we structure these events moving forward. With all that being said, let's dive into tonight's event. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Tiffany Watkins. Tiffany Watkins is well-known as Lady Canna. Tiffany's grassroots campaigning and advocacy go back over 30 years. Tiffany has been heavily involved in patient representation, harm reduction, public policy, and community organizing in the cannabis sector. Tiffany is the founder and CEO of Vanguard Media Online, a media platform and magazine that is dedicated to women in cannabis. Vanguard showcases the efforts, innovation, and creativity of all women. In addition to these pursuits, Tiffany sits on many boards and committees where she helps craft changes in cannabis policy, public health, and social justice, and is also a faculty member of Oaksterdam University. Good evening, Tiffany.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking, and thanks for having me do this tonight.
Yes, we're really excited to have you back for this second installment. You can go ahead and start your screen share and let's dive into all this juicy content.
Sounds good.
Take it away.
All right, thank you. And thanks everyone for showing up and learning a little bit about branding and marketing strategy in the cannabis space. Let's dive right in. So in this webinar, we are going to be talking about developing a strong brand and its importance, defining brand values, creating and using brand elements, crafting a marketing plan, and marketing channels and technologies. So let's start with defining what a brand is. So here's the technical description of what a brand is: a collection of tangible and intangible elements that help customers identify your company and products. Now we're going to dive a little deeper into what this exactly means, but this really is a good statement when you're talking about your brand. Tangible and intangible elements for your consumers to be able to know exactly who you are at any given time. So some of those elements, excuse me, include your brand name and your logo, which are the two that we most put together with branding. Got to have a name, got to have your logo, but it's a lot more than that. Now, those intangible items will be your brand's voice and the customer experience, Your brand has a voice. It speaks to the values of your company. And the customer experience is something that's carried with the customer long after they've purchased a product. This is their memory of you. This is their feeling when they shop with you. So what's your brand do for you? Like I was saying, it does help you, it helps customers identify your company and those feelings and perceptions they have of your products and services. It definitely conveys your company's values, your voice. And you create your companies and your retail establishments with the idea that you're going to provide service and quality to your customers. And that has value, that has future monetary value. And that's called goodwill. So let's dive a little deeper into the features of a strong brand. It's got to be unique. There's a lot of competition out there, a lot of stores offering similar offerings. So you need to stand out and need to craft a way to do so. Be unique, recognizable. You definitely don't want to get forgotten in a sea of stores that are similar to yours. Being clear and consistent. The clarity allows the consumers to be able to quickly identify you and identify your offering. And being consistent gives the feeling that the consumer can rely upon you and your products, and it'll bring them back. And values-based. We'll talk a lot more about values as we move forward, but you definitely want to stand for something in your business. Now, there are some unique considerations for cannabis branding. So let's take a look at those. Culture is huge. We all know that cannabis has a long history with humans, but it has a really tight culture. Traditional cannabis culture evolved under prohibition. So you've got a lot of people who've been fighting for the plant, fighting for justice, and they are a large part of the consumer population. Many of these consumers have strong opinions about branding and how you market, or just the voice of your business. There's also varying customer segments. So what that means is that you have a lot of people out there to choose from, lots of cannabis users, and they have different things that drive them to buy your products and services. So those many preferences can be a little challenging, but it does allow for tons of opportunity to target an underserved customer segment. So that means you can niche, and you should. Here's some examples of customer segments. Now, there are the cultural traditionalists that I spoke of in the previous slide. Those traditionalists look for specific types of what we call the old school type of products, like flour that has good, high quality potency at a decent price. And they look for edibles, mostly like baked goods and things they can remember from, again, back in the day, cookies and brownies and things like that. They're also connoisseurs. And those connoisseurs, well, first, let's just kind of dive into the word connoisseur, expert on taste and quality. Connoisseur is just the derivative of that word that says these people know what they're talking about. They feel they have it dialed in, and they know exactly what they want. When they walk into your store, they're looking for specific brands. They're looking for a specific quality. Wellness seekers. These consumers really are interested in the health and wellness benefits of cannabinoids. These individuals will be looking in your store for things that feel calm and feel like they are achieving the type of wellness that they are looking for. So they'll be looking at cannabinoid profiles and asking about terpenes and how that fits into their wellness regime. Unwinders. Seemingly a population that seems like it's easy to serve. It can be, but they're looking to relax. They're not necessarily driven by potency, but they do want something that's good and strong enough for them to feel like they can unwind after work or on a long weekend. And then we've got the Canna Curious. Now, that population, excuse me, has risen and grown over the last few years. A lot of people are very interested in getting started for the first time in cannabis or picking up where they left off several years ago. And they're going to ask a lot of questions. They're going to be relying on your bud tenders and staff to answer these questions clearly and quickly, and then pair them with product. So let's look at some of the targeting that could be done in your marketing plan. To the left here, we have Be Well. Looks calm, there's a cup of tea, muted color. This target is for the wellness seeker. They're going to feel very comfortable coming in. It's showcasing a product they just might want to buy, which is, say, maybe a tea or something they can microdose. Then to the right here, you have Strong Buzz, infused browning. You've got good, strong gold labeling and bright green. It's really targeting your cultural traditionalists. This is going to look familiar to them. That green color reminding them of the deep greens of the flower, and the Strong Buzz, the name, letting them know that it's potent and that it's a brownie, something that they can definitely connect with. So let's move into compliance. These are the rules about how you can market, how your market choices will influence the brand decision. Your name, packaging, and all those colors and characters cannot appeal to minors. So you have to be very careful. That is first and foremost. Make sure that your branding doesn't appeal to those who are under the age of 21. And non-cannabis specific IP laws. Now that means you're not going to pattern your product or mimic in your product's branding that of another company. So here's some tips for branding. Define your target customer. You won't be able to serve the entire population, but you can choose a customer segment and you can have that niche definitely carved in. And you're going to align your values. What does your company stand for? There are a lot of societal issues that cannabis consumers dial into, and it definitely affects how they purchase. So how will you align your values? And definitely know the rules. There are a lot of compliance rules when it comes to cannabis, and especially in the marketing and branding arena. Don't make your product attractive to children. There are no policies written that tell us exactly what that means, but we're going to use our best judgment when we're creating our marketing plans to not be attractive to children. And we're definitely going to move away from not being unique in our approach to our branding, making sure that we're not giving or we're not setting a goal of being just like another brand that maybe isn't in the cannabis space, but you think maybe you can mimic their brand or their logo. That would not be the avenue to go down. Definitely be unique and follow the rules. So let's go over brand values. We talk about that a lot. It is very important that your company stand for something. So they're defined as your core principles. These principles guide all aspects of your decision-making, purchases, marketing, hiring. This will drive your business. Here's some common examples of brand values that many businesses use. Prioritizing customer satisfaction, treating employees fairly, sustainability, and philanthropy. Now, let's dive a little deeper into these quickly. Your customer satisfaction is key. When customers come into your stores, they need to feel like shopping with you. That means they're feeling comfortable, it looks familiar, it's something they can resonate with. Treating your employees fairly. Well, in our retail establishments, we definitely need to make sure that our frontline employees feel comfortable about the workplace. That is reflected in their customer service. That is a part of customer satisfaction. Sustainability. Is that maybe something your company is interested in? Are you concerned about the packaging, where product is grown or manufactured, how it's grown or manufactured? That can definitely be reflected in your store and in your brand message. Philanthropy. Like I said, there's a lot of social issues that you can stand for. And in the cannabis community, there are many social justice issues that many consumers are dialed into, and you'll definitely want to be able to resonate with them. Why is this important? Well, you need to differentiate your brand. We can never say enough, and never let this leave your mind, that you have to have a unique approach, as there are many different products, services, retail establishments in the cannabis industry that offer similar products. So you need to differentiate your brand. Building your customer loyalty. You want them to be able to feel like coming back to you, and you have to give them a reason to. Guiding your business decisions and achieving a broader mission or vision. Now, your values will definitely guide your business decisions. If you're concerned about sustainability, you may want to do business with company A because they match your value system, but company B might not be recycling enough for you. So it can definitely guide your business decision. And that dials right into achieving a broader mission. When you started your business, you started with the mission. And as you grow your business, you're going to be taking a look at what your values are. Have they expanded? Have they branched off? You'll be listening to yourself there. So how do we define values? You can start with a why statement. And I know that sounds broad, but what you're doing is you're really answering why you chose to be in business. Why does your company exist? What purpose does it have? What are you solving? We have to remember that customers aren't just buying products out there. They're buying an experience. And the mission of your company definitely matters. So here's some examples of why statements from Google, Amazon, and Apple. As you can see, they're very to the point, and you know exactly what they are offering and the value that they intend to create for their customers. We'll just take the top one, Google, to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. In that statement, they say why they're in business of bringing us accessible information, how broad it is, using the word universally, and organized to show how easily you can get this information. We know why they're in business, so we know why we need them. Now, how do we define this? These are some questions you can ask yourself. What is your personal reason for launching your company? What does it mean to you? What do you hope to change? So that comes into that problem solving. You've detailed out a problem and you know exactly how to solve it. Now tell everybody why and how you can do that. How do you make your customers' lives better? And who is your target customer segment? What do they value? So that's part of partnering your values with your target customer segment so that you're speaking the same language and your mission is clear to them when they enter your establishment. So when defining your values, you're going to connect to your broader mission and stick to a few core values. It's very easy to become very diluted. There are a lot of value systems that you could dial into in the cannabis space. but you don't want to confuse your customer by going in too many directions at once. So just stick to a few core values that are very important to you, something you know you can be successful in and you can be passionate about and driven to give a better customer experience. Be specific in stating your values. Think back to Google, one sentence that told us exactly the problem they were solving, how broad they could take care of it, and how organized it would be. And then align with your customers' values. Be strategic. Find out who is thinking the same way as you, and then target that segment. Brand positioning. So it's very important after you've created your why statement, you have your mission, and you're ready to start kind of targeting an audience. So you need to ask yourself a few questions when you're trying to put together your brand positioning statement. What market do you serve? Who are your target customers? So what's your niche? What's your value system that brings you to a target section of the community that you know you can service with your products? What's your role in the market? Are you the activist? Are you the product specialist? Those things need to be defined in order to be clear in finding and targeting your customers. And most importantly, in this industry where, again, there's a lot of competition, what do you do better than your competitors? You need to really have that be a huge part of your voice, because as you survey your competitors, you need to find out what it is that you can do that they're not doing, or something that you guys are both doing, but you can do a little better. So selecting a brand name. Now, I know this sounds like it's easy, and for some it is, but sometimes it can be a detailed process. Let's dive in. So what's in a name? What are those elements? Again, with being unique. And should be clear and recallable. You do not want anyone forgetting what store they were in, a day or two after they've left your shop. You definitely want them to be able to recall many things about your store, specifically your name. And it should resonate with target customers. If your target customer is the wellness individual, then maybe you don't want, rock star in. Maybe you want something that's a little bit more subdued that can resonate with your target. And then, of course, it must comply with state and local regulations. So for being unique, you definitely want to check with the state secretary or the Secretary of State's office to make sure that your name is available, because you don't want to have the same name, marketing with the same name, and then finding out you've got to change things because someone else has that name. One, it can be a bit of a battle. You've spent money in logo and design, but outside of that, it confuses your customer if you have to change your name on the fly because you've made that type of mistake. Avoid overused cliche terms. It's really easy to fall into that, as there are a lot of colloquial names for cannabis and in the cannabis community, but you kind of want to avoid that. Step outside of that and really dial in a name that resonates with your target. And don't go too far. If they don't understand the concept, or it doesn't really match what they find when they go inside of your shop, then they won't really know what that means, and they won't remember it. And most of all, they won't come back. So you definitely don't want to confuse your consumer. So shop around for your name, ask around, make sure it's not too unique, and avoid those overused terms for sure. You want your name to be easy to pronounce and, of course, recollect. Conveys what the company does, definitely. You want them to have an idea. When they pass by, they see that name, that they kind of have an idea of what it is that you're doing in there and what services or products that you might have to offer them. Be descriptive and creative. You definitely want, that's part of the being unique, but descriptive allows them to also understand what your product is or what your values are. Your name should also resonate with target customer segments, using terms that are familiar, of course, but not overused like we stated, and reflect your brand values. This is very important because it sounds like we're going over these one after the other, and we are, and it is intentional. The reason is that overused terms can get you confused with another shop. Being unique in that matter means that you can stand out amongst a broad area of competition. In some areas, there are dispensaries on every block. You definitely want to stand out. And reflecting your brand's value ties into your why. People will buy why you're doing something long before they buy what you have. Keep that in mind in your branding. And then, of course, compliance. Super important. Again, to remember, appealing to minors is prohibited. Please make sure that you're checking again your brand for elements that may appeal to minors. Don't use inflammatory language. Make sure that no one can be offended by the names that you choose. It's counterproductive. And don't infringe on existing trademarks. We do see this a lot. There are many products that we see out there that mimic non-cannabis products, cereal treats, using the name of popular brands. And that is something that you really want to shy away from. One, there's, you can consult an attorney to find out some of the legal ramifications of doing things like that. And it's unnecessary costs on your part to have to change things after you've, again, made a mistake like that. So definitely do your homework and make sure that you're not infringing upon an existing trademark. So how do we create and using brand elements? So let's go back over and dive in a little bit deeper to the elements of a brand. And we've already discussed that it's your name and your logo and visual design elements. Those are your tangible portions of your brand. Slogans and catchphrases are also a part of that. But then you have your intangible elements that are the voice of your brand and its personality. And of course, you have your customer experience. I say that is one of the most important elements of branding is the customer experience. You can do everything you think is possible in your name and your logo, and you've got a great catchphrase and you have a value system you can stand for. But if the customer is not getting a great experience in your store for whatever reason, you have to go and reevaluate the things that make up the elements of your brand. So your logo, it needs to be a good, clear image, nice colors, and it needs to look good in color as well as grayscale. I'm so sorry for messing that word up. Grayscale, there we go. Limit text in a readable font. So there are a lot of fonts to choose from out there. And I see this often. Picking things are a little bit too ornate. I know it looks good in that moment, but you must think of what it looks like to other individuals. A great way to know this is to test amongst friends, family, and out in the community and see, is this easy to read? And convey something unique about the brand. So if it's a character or something like that, again, with compliance, making sure it's not marketing or attractive to minors, make sure that you have something unique. Visual style elements, logo usage, colors, and fonts. So these are your tangible elements, things that people are going to see and recognize you immediately. How will your logo be used? Locking in the colors that make your brand what it is. Either it's something to do with your product line, or maybe it's just your favorite color, something that you closely resonate with, or maybe it's something that resonates with your value system. But make sure that you have something that is unique to you. And of course, the fonts, again, can't say enough. Make sure you can read them and that they print well. Your brand's voice. What's your catchphrase? How is it resonating with your target customer segment? Using words, a phrase, or the tone of what you are trying to put across. You definitely don't ever want to be sarcastic, or you don't want to be inflammatory, but you may think that you have a cheeky tone, something people could giggle at. But you want to make sure that they're not giggling too much, that they're not taking your brand seriously. The tone of your brand definitely matters. Now, the customer experience, one of the most important. Your consumer needs you to be consistent, not only in your product availability, but in your branding and advertising. They want to know what to expect from you. They see an ad from you, if they see marketing materials from you, they want to be able to recognize that. Oh, I know exactly what that is, and I know what they stand for, and I know what products they have, and they can rely upon that. Meet their expectations. Never overpromise and underdeliver to your consumer. Definitely have what it is that you are marketing. If it's in your voice and in your value system, make sure that you're following through. If you said that you are an activist just like your consumers, then you need to be present in the community. You need to be active in the community and listening to their needs and rallying along with them, alongside them, when they expect you to be there. And you want to make sure that everything that you're doing reflects your brand. That can be a confusing message as well. If you're not following along your own brand guidelines, that confuses your customer. So, written, audio, video content should all be in the brand voice. This is a part of your consistency. Visual elements should always be the same. So if your logo looks a particular way over here, over there it needs to look the same way. And what I mean by that is fonts. If it's in color, it needs to be in the same colors. If it's always red, white, and blue, then over being blue, black, and yellow doesn't make sense to your customer. You have to have consistency in your visual elements, and should be applied across every piece of marketing material. So yes, your brand, your logo, catchphrase, things like that. If you're creating flyers, if you're creating posts for social media, you should brand those posts. You should make sure that when a potential customer is coming across your materials, they know who you are and they know what you stand for. If they're part of your target customer segment, then they will definitely resonate with what they've seen and visit you. A style guide. It's the definitive reference for the use of brand elements. Now, sometimes you'll hear this referred to as a brand Bible, and it's just really a document or a file that contains how you intend your brand elements to be utilized. And if you're collaborating with someone else or trying to explain this to your team, you need to let them know that this is how we use the brand. This is what it looks like. This is how it's allowed to be used. These are the fonts. Everything that you want your brand to be is in that definitive reference or style guide. So let's take a look at a mock-up of a style guide or a brand Bible. You'll see the logo, image, text. You'll see how it's not supposed to appear, being X'd out. You'll see the colors. They have the guidelines and the different shades that can be used. You'll see the typography, the fonts. These are the only fonts to be used. This is something internally that you can share with your teams to make sure that everyone's on the same page about what your brand's supposed to look like for consistency. And remember, your brand is a living entity. It's going to grow and evolve with your company. Now, you can refine your brand as you learn more about your target markets and customer segments, but you also can refine your brand as you learn more about your value system and you learn more about your operations. As your business grows, you will find that you may need to reiterate what it is that your brand looks like and how the voice may have changed. Here's an example. When Vanguard Media Online began, the visual on the left is how its magazine looked. A lot of text and a logo. For the iterative process, we determined that since Vanguard Media Online is targeting women, the target customer segment needed to see a representation of themselves. So we decided that women should definitely always be on the front cover, and that Vanguard magazine wasn't enough to let them know that the parent company was a media company. So we included it in the next iteration. This is how we grew, and we'll continue to grow and listen to ourselves. Now, thank you very much for spending some time tonight. I hope you've learned a lot about branding and marketing in the cannabis space.
Thank you so much for that, Tiffany. So I wanted to, give you a chance to maybe talk a little more about your transformation of your branding for Vanguard, because we have a few more minutes here in the lecture component, and I think that it's a really interesting story. So why don't you go ahead, and if you want to reshare your slides, you can. Otherwise, let's talk more about your personal journey with Vanguard, because I think it's going to be really informative for the attendees.
Absolutely, I'm happy to. So when Vanguard began, I knew that we wanted to talk about women. We knew that there was a need for women to have a safe space to share.
Yes.
And so, with the focus being there, we almost had tunnel vision on the project, and we made it very technical. The first, which has now been archived, the first issue, which is depicted in the slide, was very technical. Now, I do have a tech background, and I think that's where a lot of that came from. It's just black and white text, couple of pictures, and really just diving into issue. Well, we had to realize that people have feelings, and part of providing a safe space is providing a place where people can feel. And we knew that we needed to have better resonance with women. So we decided that the front cover should always have a woman on the front or an element that speaks to our mission. Now, our mission is to showcase women and give them the spotlight unapologetically. And we have a catchphrase for that, which is join the Vanguard movement. So sometimes in lieu of seeing a woman's face, you will see an element of our brand, which is our catchphrase. And encompassing our target like that really opened up for people to be able to feel the project and not just look at it like a technical manual. So we were very happy with that, and we will continue to grow. We're about 3 years in now, and I know that over the next 5 years, we're gonna still be growing, and we may still, look a little different. It happens, and it's just positive growth.
How often do you think that cannabis brands need to look at rebranding? And do you think that a lot of legacy operators, we know that a lot of folks in the social equity community may be transitioning from the traditional market into the regulated market? What are specific concerns for those folks? And how often do you think brands might need to look at a refresh?
I think that brands should be looking at a refresh, whether they execute it or not, be looking for reasons to refresh about every 6 months. Right now, this industry is growing leaps and bounds, and we need to be able to keep up with that. The value of the consumer changes, and we need to be able to pivot to their needs, because we may be solving a need here today, but if their trajectory changes, we need to be able to follow along with that to be able to continue to service their needs. And as legacy operators come on into the regulated space, we know that their following is coming with them. That's a reason to take a look at your brand and see if you are targeting the proper customer segment.
So in terms of customers, changing what products they're looking for, what do you think are the main drivers of how consumers are changing what products they're looking for, and how that may actually intersect with your branding?
Consumers are becoming more and more educated because we have a lot of kind of curious people. These people are thirsting for knowledge, and they are grabbing it wherever they can. And with that knowledge, they're taking to their stores that they like to shop with. And if they're not finding things that match what they've researched, then sometimes they are put off. I say that the best thing that any store can do is make sure that their front line is well versed in cannabis. In this space, like on other industries, we have to wear many hats. Sometimes that comes with educator or researcher and or patient advocate. And so I think that front lines need to be prepared for that type of customer, as more and more customers are coming to them with the knowledge of cannabinoid profiles and efficacy of terpenes and things like that. They need to be able to answer those questions and direct them to products that match what they're looking for.
And, people are likely also combating misinformation a lot from these kind of curious folks too.
Yes.
So what do you think the role of education is in a marketing initiative for a new cannabis company? Like, what are ways that people can sort of stake their claim in the educational space as a product brand?
I think that education is really key in keeping your brand alive, because the misinformation does come through, but people are willing to debate it. And so that means that you really need to know your stuff, and you need to be comfortable and confident enough to dispel myths as they come to you. You have to be willing to tell a potential customer that comes through and says, oh no, it's this way, this is the way it's going to be. And if you know that, and you've researched and you know that they are incorrect, guiding them with education can bring you a customer that for life, because you enlighten them and they trust that for sure.
I love that response. When I get folks visiting me and they're always looking for a dispensary, I actually always point to a dispensary that was medical and is transitioned into the adult use market. I'm not going to name the name, but I'm going to say something that they've done that almost no one has done until recently, which is they measured the terpene content in all of their products and actually made it available to customers. And I always thought, especially like 5 years ago when they were doing that, how remarkable that was and how much of a differential it was. And that dispensary is really successful because people always point to it as a place where they learn more about cannabis every time they go in there. And their frontline staff are highly educated about the plant. And this is definitely an issue that we're running into a lot in the cannabis space. It's not a new issue, right? But, what are some thoughts on this? This is something that comes up a lot in terms of how you structure a business in cannabis, and a lot of concerns that regulators have and the community has around how we market cannabis products to consumers. It's these bud tending stuff oftentimes that are the first sort of communication people have. So what are things to consider in that realm, Tiffany, as a new operator?
As a new operator, I think that you have an opportunity to change the voice of your frontline. We all know that many times you walk into a store and you say, "Ooh, I'm looking for something. I want this type of efficacy," and you get a lot of, "Oh yeah, yeah, I love this product. This is fire. This is great. This is the best I've had." And where that's great for some forms of marketing, it doesn't necessarily hit your target per se. Depending now, depending if that's your target, you want those people who say they want something that's labeled as fire and they'll take it, then that's it. But like I said, consumers are becoming smarter. They're becoming more health conscious when it comes to cannabinoids and therapies and medical freedom. So that might not be an appropriate approach. So I think that your product line needs to run through your frontline team, and they need to know it backwards and forwards. They need to understand the product, its efficacies, where it came from, anything and everything about those products, so they can talk knowledgeably with anyone that comes in. I have had women come to me and say, I'm looking for something to help with menopause. And they feel really comfortable going to someone in a store who can talk, regardless of age or gender, who can talk to them about the product and not address them in this colloquial fashion that makes them feel like they're a fish out of water because they've walked into your store. That is not a comfortable customer experience. And when they leave, they're telling other people that they weren't comfortable in the store, but they're not saying why they weren't comfortable in the store. And I've tested this out through market research on my own, going into stores women have told me they were uncomfortable in and finding out why. Nothing wrong with the store, just the voice didn't speak to them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We have an interesting comment in the chat from Beauty, and they brought up that they like the term med tender, and they think that it implies a level of professionalism and knowledge, and they feel like it presents as less sexist. And I, for as long as I've been in the industry, I actually haven't thought of that term. What are your thoughts on it, Tiffany? Have you heard this term med tender, and what are your thoughts?
I have heard the term before. I've heard people reference that, never used it, but I will say this. We have a compliance issue with that, because using med in front of tender gives bud tender a medical claim. And whereas that's a medical claim, saying you're a patient advocate is more activism and service than saying you're a med tender. That means some kind of medical advice or medical knowledge is present. And unfortunately, we can't do that in the cannabis space.
Mm-hmm. And it's this very unique place that the cannabis industry finds itself, because we are trying to help folks who are having medical issues and get access to cannabis products that will help them. But we have all these very fine lines that we have to walk, and things that are acceptable to say and are not. And we've reviewed these, in previous webinars, but it's something that all business operators are really going to have to contend with, right? We're really not going to sort of escape this model anytime soon. So let's dive into a few questions right now. Elizabeth asked, regarding customer experience, it's impossible to please everyone. That is the truth. Do you have any advice on how and where companies can draw the line? For example, a customer buys a product that they didn't enjoy and they want to return it, but it doesn't fall within a company's return policy. Where do you draw the line between appeasing the customer and sticking to your return policy?
I love questions like this, because what that question really is, not for the person who asked it, but in businesses in general, is a confidence question. How confident are you that if you do something that maybe puts a customer off, will they come back? How many people will they tell? What will be the effect of this one customer? And I think that you have to weigh your policies against your target. How sensitive is your target customer segment? Are they prone to saying, hey, we boycott this store for unfair treatment based off of something erroneous, like something is wrong with this product, or I didn't like this product? I think that regulations make it difficult for us to take product back, and the more knowledge that we can give our clients as they come in, kind of setting them up for that. this is a regulated industry, because many of our consumers don't understand that. They say it's legal. It's just like I returning, this box of crackers was open, I can go back in. And it's not necessarily like that for cannabis businesses. So making sure that your customers know and understand policies before they leave your store can make that transition a lot easier. I'm sorry, sir or ma'am. Let me explain to you, our return policy is harder to say than thanks for shopping with us. Now let me talk to you about our return policy. Before they leave, that they leave armed with knowledge, and they know that you tried, and likely they will not try to return that product. So I think that there's a couple of ways to play that. That is knowledge beforehand by letting them know. And if they still bring it back to you, being calm about it and knowing that you're not going to please this one customer this time, but offering them incentives to come back. A piece of swag or something like that.
That's a great answer. And, it's also important to know that there are some compliance guidelines around products being returned. And there are some concerns that operators will have with where they're sourcing their products from. And this is, obviously, especially true for retailers. And retailers will unfortunately be put in the position every once in a while of having a product returned for, because it was faulty. A good example of this is that concentrated cannabis, terpenes in it are highly volatile, and they can actually exit out of packaging if they were packaging correctly. And so you're going to have a really robust internal return policy that's compliant, and you're going to have a great way to deal with your customers, like Tiffany just laid out. I just wanted to throw that out there just because it might be something these operators are thinking about for the first time of, oh yeah, returns of a highly regulated product. This is probably going to be a unique process. The next question is from Laura. What do you think about the name DoorHash? Does that infringe on a trademark? I'm going to remind everybody that Tiffany knows a lot about branding and marketing, but she's not an attorney, nor is she your attorney. But I'd love to get your thoughts on that, Tiffany. Do you think that DoorHash infringes on a trademark?
I think that it has the potential to. It does. You definitely would want to consult with an attorney and have some backing when you are going to mimic another non-cannabis product's name or likeness.
Absolutely. And recently, there has been some news about the fact that many candy manufacturers are actually getting quite incensed. I'm just giving an example here. Quite incensed about the use of terms in the cannabis space for specific cultivars that are mimicking a lot of candy products, and that they are actually having conversations as an industry, because all industries actually have associations and work together to actually formulate a response to the cannabis community about the use of these terms. So this is a very real thing. You really need to pay attention to how things are labeled and branded, and make sure that you are not having any likeness or mimicry to other brands, as was discussed by Tiffany earlier. All right, next question from Mitch is, what are your thoughts on cannabis brands using TikTok to advertise their brand, given the high amount of underage users? And Tiffany, can you remind everyone again, because this was from the last webinar, what are the rules around age and advertising in the cannabis space and the demographic of who you're advertising to?
Right. You need to make sure that your communication with an individual, that you have verified their age first before discussing your product or service, your product or cannabis related service with them. You need only verify that one time, but it must be something you can document. So that's what makes social media very sticky, because not only do you have people on there who are under the age of 21, you sometimes have minors on there who are under the age of 18, as their guidelines for most social media is 13 and older. So TikTok has really cracked down on cannabis related items. And you'll find that you think you've posted your marketing materials on TikTok, and what's happened, it's just kind of frozen in time there. So but the algorithm doesn't catch everybody all the time. So it looks like our cannabis operators are having a heyday on TikTok, but really what's happening is it's just causing more exposure to the problem that they consider cannabis businesses to be. So be careful on social media. TikTok and otherwise, that you're following their terms of usage. Talk about your value system, any activism or social justice in cannabis, and talk about your offerings in terms of education, in terms of knowledgeable staff, and in terms of targets that you might serve, like the San Francisco area, just to give it one, just the area, but no addresses and no targeting which neighborhoods directly, just really being slightly vague. And always remember, in your bios, link not to your menu page, link to your about, your team, your activism, something, but not to your product line.
And could you give us like sort of a rundown, because Tiffany has amazing things to say about how we target certain social media channels, and very soon all of the equity community in LA will have access to even more curriculum from Tiffany. But do you want to give us a brief rundown on like some of your top thoughts on social media and things that companies need to consider when they are trying to target customers and advertise to customers and social media through their pages?
So choice of social media platform is key. Right now, of course, the buzz is Instagram, and and that's great. You can get a lot of following on Instagram, but remember, it's partnered with and parented by Facebook. So the guidelines in the terms of usage are exactly the same. In your bios, like I said, make sure that you are not saying that you are selling anything. In your posts, make sure that people can't come down and buy, or you're having a special on. Make sure you're talking about what your value is. What do you bring to the community? What does your store do in the city in which it sits? What are some of the things that in your value system that are maybe in the news that you can share? And those things will help target your following. Also, utilizing in your store, when they come in, a loyalty program that includes capturing email addresses and social media handles for follows and follow backs. Because ultimately what we want out there on social media are the numbers to go up. We want to have 150,000 followers. And cannabis companies believe that if they show the nicest buds and they show all their friends smoking, and it's just this beautiful billows of smoke and all this fun environment, which I think is stellar, just not for social media. I think for digging into your value system and getting serious following, you want to go to Twitter. Twitter is where you can engage in a more serious sense. You're limited on characters, you're limited on size of pictures, but it's really easy to get what's going on today in cannabis in your area. And you want what I know that if you've been on this webinar series before, is called earned media. The best way to find that is through places like Twitter and LinkedIn, because these people are looking for those who have their finger on the pulse in their businesses in cannabis, and they want to talk about you. So you can build those relationships, because ultimately that's what you want, is to build great relationships with people that are going to bring you right back into your targets.
That's great. Yeah. And Mitch just popped into the chat that Twitter is where the journalists live. So if you want free press, get on Twitter. So let's remind everybody again, what is earned media versus paid media, Tiffany?
So earned media is third-party media, someone talking about you. And a lot of times it holds more clout because people are more inclined to believe what someone else has to say about you than you talking about your business, because you have an agenda. You want their clientele, you want them to come to you. So third-party media offers you an opportunity to have someone else talk about your values, someone else to talk up your product line and your services and your customer satisfaction. So it is highly sought after because it has bragging rights. So, anything that you can do to put yourself in line for that, the better. Non-earned media is definitely still great. But you have to work hard and zero in on your targets. You have to strategize to make sure that your brand elements are matching your values and that of your target customer segment.
Absolutely. All right, next question. If brands want to reach more women, what are your thoughts on using Pinterest?
I love the idea. I love the concept of what this person is saying of, where are women? Yes, of course, there are more women putting boards up on Pinterest, but the stigma is still out there and it's still social media and you have to still be very careful. So when thinking in terms of that, when you're maybe crafting a board, you might want to think of how you can convey your offering without products. Because when we look on Pinterest, we see a lot of products or how-tos or recipes or clothing. They're showing their products. We can't really do that. So you're going to have to tie in somewhere else. But targeting women in advertising is easier than you think, because the attitude for women right now is treat us like everyone else. We went through the times where the target for women was making it very soft and very much so about our children and flowers and things like that. And so we've grown and we've evolved into, we want to be spoken to just like anyone else. So as advertisers in this space, we can really dial into that by just taking your marketing approach and making it all inclusive, not gender specific.
How well do you think the cannabis industry is marketing to women currently? I get that we wanted to have sort of a universal feel, but what are areas where you think the cannabis industry is still misstepping in how it's approaching folks who identify as women in the consumer base?
I think that on a whole, not stepping close enough. There's not enough being done, because right now, of course, where the money is targeting men in the space. And so I'm still seeing ads with scantily clad women, which can be a compliance issue. Just since we're on the subject, that can definitely be a compliance issue. You may not sell cannabis and anything of a sexual nature. And so they're putting off customer segments, and so driving women to other brands. Well, driving women to other brands because they've been offended over here is not a marketing strategy. That's an opportunity to target an underserved population at that point, and making things smart and informative and being able to replace activities that women do notoriously. We hear the women wine and weed. So if you can replace certain activities and just go, it's women and weed, and that could be an approach to targeting an underserved population where they really feel like, I don't want to shop over here, so I'm going to shop over there. Definitely get in and try to craft something that makes sense to them, for them to relax, be recreational, or to, maybe they want the best taste. If you love the best wine, maybe you will love the best weed. There's always an approach.
Although the best cannabis is always subjective, isn't it? There are some things that are objective, but that's the holy grail, right, of marketing and branding. How do you create the universal taste for consumers for cannabis? All right, next question. If you're planning to vertically integrate, is it better to have multiple brands to cross promote the brands, or to keep it all the same to create a single strong recognition of what you're doing?
That's such a great question, because that can be really confusing. You think, well, I've done all this. Do I want to have a brand here and a brand there? You may want to think about that, because, if you might have a small batch, very craft brand, very high end, and then you are just locked into targeting that one consumer. But if you want add-ons, if you would like to bring in another target, you'll have trouble if you're really only having one offering. So that can be an iteration of your brand, starting with one that's high end, or maybe it's affordable, and then going into another set of values. Either I'm going to go from the lower end or, medium grade product to a higher end product, or I might have flour and topicals, or I might have topicals and edibles and no flour. So your opportunities, your possibilities within that opportunity are endless. Just make sure that you've done your homework and that you can launch with brands and products that match your target customer segment. I feel like a broken record saying target customer segment, but it is that important. It is really, truly that important in this space where we all are selling the same type of products.
Absolutely. The competition in the retail space, I mean, the whole entire industry is really fierce. Incredible. But one thing that we've noticed a lot, and I love your thoughts on this, Tiffany, is that there really isn't great brand differentiation, especially in retail and in cultivation. What are your thoughts on that?
And I know people want to get their businesses open and they want to get those product lines filled. Processors want to get these things distributed. They want things on the shelf. So it's really easy to fall into the cookie cutter. But I think that, for sustainability purposes, we are going to have to start taking a look at better packaging. And with that comes an opportunity to look different. I have seen some innovations right now in California that look great. I've seen a product line that looks like a slice of pie. And when it goes to the store, when it gets dropped at the store, it's a whole pie. And it's displayed as that, and it's sold slice by slice. And I said, that's innovation. That's taking a look at the products out there and going, what can I do different? What can I do better than this person over here selling the same thing as me? Well, I think they captured it by making people look twice. They're going, is that a pie? Like what am I looking at here? And I can buy a slice, not a sack. Well, that just changes the whole idea of your purchase. So I think that, there's a lot of movement out there as this industry evolves and as the regulations change. Right now with child resistant packaging, we're kind of forced to look the same way. So as policies change and guidelines change, we will be able to innovate. So always keep on a back burner your designs, because we will eventually be able to use these types of designs in a better sense.
That's awesome. And we just got a follow-up question to what you were just talking about, Tiffany. When it comes to marketing and packaging, do you feel there's a market opportunity for brands to shift to sustainable packaging and attract customers?
It really is. It really is. That is a very strong value system, is the planet. And cannabis is really using up a lot of resources right now. And we're being rather forced into it because of regulations, and we understand that. But there is an opportunity to do better. And if you have the resources to do better out of the gate, I would say do that, because that is going to speak to a population of people, and they're really going to resonate with that. Many people are very concerned about the amount of waste that they're involved in. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, anything that we can do when we open our stores to, if we are, open our stores or start our product lines, I think will be better for the future of cannabis and sustainability.
Absolutely. And I think over time, we will see regulations shift around exit packaging. We'll see companies figure out how to meet the understandable requirements to make sure that cannabis isn't able to be tampered with. But I do think that there's ways to approach it where we can use more sustainable materials. And I think we're hopefully going to see more of that moving forward. But of course, these end up costing money, a lot of money. But across all industries, anything that is green or sustainable is actually increasing in value and being purchased more. Like, this is the largest growing segment of our global economy, is green products. And so I think cannabis has an amazing place in this, in this current landscape to inform this process, help mirror, reflect this concept of sustainability. So I think that was a great question. The next one is, in what ways do you think the social equity community in Los Angeles can drive their branding decisions to unite together? How do you think the social equity community can unite together in their branding decisions or marketing decisions at the start of their operations, right? So this is more speaking, of course, to folks who are starting new brands right now in our audience.
Right. No, I love that question because it speaks to the power of the people. And social equity operators, we definitely know, have direct effects and are a product of the war on drugs. And so it's part of not forgetting where it came from, where we came from. And those of us who have been activists in the space for a very long time appreciate that approach. I think that starting coalitions amongst social equity operators as they come out of, just right into the space of operating businesses. I think having a coalition that is a reminder of what the fight really is and what needs to change so that you hold each other accountable. Because once you get out there in business, it's really easy to forget where you came from. And I think that, and not by any fault of the operator, I think it's just the fast pace of the cannabis industry. So I think that a great way to stay grounded and stay active is to band together, start a coalition. We're always examining policy. And as bills come out, as drafts come through, we are always looking to add comments and do things like that. If there are groups that are already operational, that's more power for the cause. So it's a great idea to band together, kind of, you can't really advertise together, but you can, just kind of vent about what's going on, where are your pain points, how are you solving, what am I doing, that type of thing. And then talking about the issues of that are left over from the war on drugs, and just being a coalition.
Yes, and those issues continue every day. And there are still markets across the country and the globe where, the criminalization of cannabis is presenting, grave risk to many different communities.
Yes.
Do you think that there are some branding and marketing strategies that could employ sourcing products from other social equity community members? Is that something that could be employed? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a wonderful idea, a social equity retail establishment that only carries social equity brands. It's a great way to support the social equity community, but it also makes a statement.
Mm-hmm. A very clear statement.
Yeah, very, very clear, and that many will resonate with. Some will not, but many will, and those would be your targets, and they will respect your business for it.
Great. This is a really good question. Is it better to feature the social equity aspect of my company as part of my brand? How much do you think the social equity community should focus on their participation or their being a part of this, community of this program in their branding?
Right now, I think it's natural to focus a portion of your branding on your social equity status, because it is remarkable. And it's something to be proud of, not something for it to be pushed aside or said that, that, oh, well, you got this, so you're that type of business. No, you say it loud and proud, because you're a product of what we've been fighting for decades.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. If I wanted to eventually expand into multiple states, is there a difference in how I want to create my brand? Like keep it LA centric from the start or have something with more national appeal? Now, obviously, we're really focused in this conversation on the LA market and community. But I think the best way to sort of look at this question is, how do brands have longevity? Because when we start a company, we don't necessarily know where it's going to go, right? So how do you think a brand carries longevity and is transferable to different areas, if that was to be a part of your business's trajectory down the road?
I think that's a wonderful vision. Number one, we, just like what Natalie says, we start our businesses with the idea of growth. The sky's the limit. And that is empowering, and it feels good, and it's positive. However, because we're dealing with a product that doesn't cross state lines, and we are dealing with a product that doesn't have the same laws from one coast to the next coast, it's good to master the area that you're in first while keeping a close eye on where you want to go. So that may mean that you are constantly researching what a particular state that you're targeting for the future, what their laws are, how the operations are, what the brands look like. Because we don't have that type of freedom to move our companies wherever we wish, there's a tight-knit group in every state that says that reflects that state. So you will need to research where you want to go, and your brand might have to dilute just a little bit to stay relevant where in that state. So it's a process, but again, we are talking about just Los Angeles and California, but it is, keep in mind, it is a process that takes a lot of research. And while you're building and mastering in California, that can be your side project, that you are researching what it takes to operate in fill in the blank state, whatever it is that you're looking for, so that you're prepared. And as their laws change, you can kind of find a place that you fit into that.
Absolutely. And, what are any specific thoughts you have about the LA market? Like, what are ways that you think brands can have a compelling message in the Los Angeles market? Los Angeles market being the largest individual cannabis market in the world, arguably, at least a place where people have access to cannabis. A place that has historically had a lot of entanglement with the war on drugs, and a community that has a lot of different sub-communities within it, an incredibly diverse place. What do you think are really core elements of how a cannabis company can be relevant in Los Angeles?
I think that, outside of societal issues, we can't forget that the subculture of cannabis is creative and artistic and musical, and has a sense of that Saturday market vibe. And so you definitely don't want to go into this corporate America style structure in a place that honors culture. So I would say in Los Angeles specifically, making sure, depending on what neighborhood you wind up in or that you're already operating in, that you make sure that you know what the culture is and the subculture, because they're all present during the day to shop during your business hours. So make sure that you're able to tie in to the creativity and the longevity of that community in your branding and in your voice, for sure.
Great. Love that. So what would you want to look out for when searching out a vendor to help you develop your branding and marketing material? I think a lot of people have some really great ideas and they want to execute them on their own, but I think a lot of folks are going to need, some vendors to help them develop their branding and marketing material. So what are the qualities that you would look for when searching out a vendor?
I think that is such an excellent question, because it is something that people look for often. And then, new businesses sometimes shy away from these larger firms that are dedicated to cannabis, but they can't afford it. It costs too many thousands per month. I think that ultimately what you're looking for is someone who's willing, who's artistic enough to be able to execute on your guidance, but savvy enough to know that they don't know it all, and that they need to do their portion of research to make sure that they are able to execute in a compliant manner. Look for people who are willing to go, I don't know yet. Because those are people, those who say, oh, no, I know it. Now you have to find out what they really exactly know. So if you guys can learn together, that is sometimes fits into your budget. You learn something, they learn something, your guidance gets executed and everyone's happy. So I think ultimately what I would look for is knowledge and the willingness to research to find out more in regards to compliance.
Absolutely. Wow, I can't believe, this time has flown by, but I like to always end our time with our amazing panelists, such as yourself, Tiffany, with you giving a few final thoughts to the social equity community. I have a seeking suspicion we're going to see you again down the road as we continue to develop all this amazing curriculum with the city of Los Angeles and with this community together. We're all going to get to that place of compliance and understanding as a team. But what are some thoughts that you would like to leave for the attendees this evening?
I appreciate that. First and foremost, I thank each and every one of you for your time. Coming out to things like this is really the first step in getting your business off the ground or branded. I think that you guys all need to understand that you're in a great spot in a great time period, and you have won a portion of the fight. And don't forget that, or shortchange yourselves for those things. This is a great opportunity to build resonance in this space, things that people will talk about for decades to come. And I think that doing series like this, attending series such as these webinars, is your foot in the door to the future of what cannabis looks like for those who have been trodden by it. So kudos, and I appreciate you all.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, for joining us this evening. Really appreciated those thoughts. And I'd like to thank all of you for participating in the Los Angeles Department of Cannabis Regulation Social Equities Programs Business Licensing and Compliance series of webinars. Join us for next week for part 2 of our delivery and transportation series. We will have Linda Sandoval, the delivery and regional manager of Sweet Flower Dispensary Group, as our panelist next week. It should be an amazing presentation. And I wanted to let all of you know that this content was created by the Department of Cannabis Regulation. This content was not created by the Department of Cannabis Regulation or the City of Los Angeles and is for informational purposes only. So my absolute pleasure to be your moderator this evening. I hope you all learned a lot, and we look forward to seeing you again next week on Thursday, same time, same place. Have a great evening, y'all.